When I first got to Berat, I took a furlong to get here, which is basically a minibus. And what I didn't know was that a minibus drops you off 3 kilometres outside of the town. But walking into the centre of town, what I did see was a number of these communist statues. So I've come back today just to have a quick look at some of them. So you can see communist star on the top there, and brutalist architecture. But in the back here, we'd seem to have a war, well, in essence a graveyard, but it'll be a war memorial. I imagine, looking at the dates on the graves, it's people who died in the resistance fighting against the fascists and eventually the Germans, which allowed Enver Hoxha and the communists to come to power. So you can see first one 1943, 1943, 1944, 1943, 1947, which is later, but perhaps that person still fought some way. So look, he was only 24 years old. We get a bit closer. 1944. 1944. That gentleman, I assume it's a gentleman, 1884 to 1943. So a bit older. Well, significantly older. But you see there's a large number of these. In fact, they all seem to have died during the resistance times, pretty much. Except when we get over to these ones, these are more recent. So 1937 to 1957. I wonder what my question is. I wonder what you have to do to get into this memorial, to get into this graveyard. Certainly it'd have to be a fighter. In this case, it's an unmarked grave. It's just a partisan. And that in essence is a soldier who fought in the resistance for the communists. Now that gentleman, you can see his picture. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos, you know I am actually quite anti-communist. So this is not supposed to be a glorification of communism. But these people died fighting for their country, doing what they thought was the right thing to do. So I'm not here to judge the individuals by any means. Another 25 years old, that person. And you see it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. So are these all people from Berat that fought and died, most of them, during the resistant times? Looks like it. It's 1928 to 1952. So again, by 1952, the communists had achieved power and had their grasp on power. So, but he wasn't very old. Perhaps he died of injuries related to fighting at a young age. And you can see. Well, we'll just pan across. So here's some people who have been given the bigger graves for whatever reason. Officers, generals perhaps. And then we scan across there. And this is an interesting one I've just noticed. I'm trying to be respectful as I walk around here. Using army fatigues, 1976 to 1999. So he fought for his country, born in 1976 during communist times, saw communism fall in 1991, then saw the mini Albanian civil war in 96-97 time, and then died in 99. And he would have been 23 very interesting. 63 to 2000. So even after the fall of communism, former communists were still being put into these graves here. That gentleman in his communist uniform. Very interesting. I don't know why exactly, the reasoning, but when communism fell, obviously a lot of the statues and things like that were destroyed by the populace, were pulled down. But not this one. Not this graveyard. It was obviously respected, and people were still put in here long after, well, almost a decade after communism had fallen, in that example over there. And we can see a partisan, just an unmarked partisan, with flowers being put there. And here, still somebody is placing flowers into this grave for Tully Nika, 1913 to 1944. So Tully would have seen, there was a mini, I can't remember the exact date, there was a mini period where Albania was a democracy, would have seen the monarchy, would have experienced fascism, and would have died fighting to establish communism. I knew there was a statue here, but I wasn't expecting to see this many graves. Again, all the people. Now, if all these people are from Berat, Berat is a very small place relatively. So it's a lot of people to have died. This is the equivalent in England we have in every town and city and village almost. Memorials to those that fought in this First World War and the Second World War. And this would be the Albanian equivalent. So there's names on the far board, names on that board. But I don't know if they've been taken off here or they were never populated, I don't know. Got another unmarked grave there, another partisan. Okay, I think we'll end there and we'll move on to the next statue. But yeah, quite the impressive memorial to the war dead. Another point I want to make before I leave is about the communist dictator Enver Hoxha. So he had commissioned and built a pyramid, a giant building, a pyramid building built out of concrete in the capital, Tirana. It was never completed, but the idea was that that would be his mausoleum, and after he died and the pyramid was completed, he would be placed in there and there would be a museum, a dedication to his life. That never happened, and today that pyramid is actually being repurposed and turned into a centre, an excellent for coding and for computer science. Now, he did also have another grave in Tirana, which is quite, as you can imagine, an elaborate grave. After the fall of communism, the body was exhumed. He was placed into just a normal grave in a normal graveyard in Tirana, which I may go and try and find in a week or so's time. But the point that I want you to make is these individuals here, these unmarked graves, the partisan who's just there, and these individuals that are named, probably have more impressive graves, a more impressive setting than the communist dictator himself does. And for me, I feel that's kind of apt, because he was the person, he was the one that caused the suffering for his people. These people were just fighting for what they believed to be right, to get rid of the fascists and to take back their country, and so they could establish Albania again as a sovereign state ruled by Albanians. So I think it's kind of correct that they have more of a memorial to themselves than the actual communist dictator did.